The world was a symphony of chaos, played in the key of desperation. Red dust, kicked up by the frantic rhythm of boots and the percussive blast of explosions, choked the air, painting the last rays of the Afghan sun a bruised, bloody orange. For Commander Eva Rostova, the scene below was a nightmare viewed from the cheap seats of a dying outpost command center. On the flickering monitors, her men, boys, really, most of them barely old enough to shave, were being systematically dismantled. They were pinned down, a small reconnaissance team caught in a perfectly executed pincer movement in a valley nicknamed the Devil's Jawbone. It was a name they were learning was horribly apartment. The line is breaking at Sierra 4. A voice crackled through her headset, tight with panic. It was Sergeant Miller, a good man with a wife and a new baby girl waiting for him back in Texas. Eva's knuckles were white where she gripped the edge of the console. She could see it. On the screen, the green icons representing her soldiers were being swallowed by a tide of red. The enemy was a ghost, a phantom force that had materialized from the rocks and ravines, moving with a discipline and coordination that was terrifyingly new. "Hold your ground, Sergeant," she ordered, her voice a low, steady instrument she had spent years perfecting. Inside, her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She was lying. There was no ground to hold. There was only ground to die on. Reinforcements are inbound. Another lie. The nearest support was a rapid response unit 40 minutes out, a lifetime in a firefight like this. Air support? A joke. The brass at Bagram had been crystal clear. The sector was too hot, too saturated with sophisticated, shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles they hadn't anticipated. The risk was too high, they'd said. They were writing her men off. They were writing her off. A fresh wave of explosions rocked the outpost, sending a shower of dust and concrete from a ceiling. One of the monitors fizzled, then went dark. Another green icon vanished. A knot of ice formed in Eva's stomach. This was it. This was the moment that would define her career, or end it. More than that, it was the moment that would end the lives of 12 good men who had trusted her. She looked at the face of the man standing beside her, Colonel Jennings, a career officer with a chest full of medals and a face carved from granite. And disapproval. He had been against this reconnaissance mission from the start, calling it a waste of assets. He hadn't said it to her face, of course. He didn't need to. His disdain for her was a palpable force in every briefing, every interaction. She was a woman in a man's world, a commander who'd gotten her post through what he and his cronies likely called diversity initiatives. She wasn't one of the boys. She hadn't come up through the same dusty, backslapping corridors of power. She had earned her rank through grit, intelligence, and an almost inhuman capacity for work, but to men like Jennings, she would always be an outsider. "Call it, Commander," Jennings said, his voice devoid of emotion. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order wrapped in the thinnest veil of courtesy. Pull them back. What's left of them? Pull them back? Through that meat grinder? It was a death sentence. But leaving them there was, too. It was a choice between two impossibilities, a commander's ultimate test. She could hear the desperation in Miller's breathing over the comms, the distant, rhythmic thump-thump-thump of a heavy machine gun, the screams of the wounded. Each sound was a nail being hammered into her soul. "Give me 5 more minutes." She pleaded, her voice cracking for the first time. She hated the weakness in it, hated that she was showing it in front of him. Jennings's eyes were cold, like chips of Arctic ice. "For what, Rostova? A miracle. We don't deal in miracles. We deal in acceptable losses. And right now, you're about to exceed them. Drastically." The phrase acceptable losses hung in the air, obscene and suffocating. She thought of Miller's baby girl, a tiny thing she'd seen in a photo, all pink cheeks and wide, innocent eyes. Was she an acceptable loss? Eva squeezed her eyes shut, the faces of her men flashing in her mind. She had looked each one of them in the eye before they'd rolled out, had promised them she'd have their back. A commander's promise. The most sacred vow in her world. And she was about to break it. She reached for the mastercom switch, her hand trembling. Her finger hovered over the button that would signal the retreat, the button that would condemn some to die in the open and brand her a failure for the rest of her life. The command center felt like a tomb, the silence broken only by the crackle of dying hopes over the radio. She had no options, no support, no way out. She had given up. Her finger began to press down, and then a new sound cut through the cacophony. It was a sound that didn't belong, a sound so alien and so powerful it seemed to shake the very foundations of the mountains. It wasn't the high-pitched whine of a fighter jet. It was a deep, guttural, angry roar. A sound of pure, unadulterated. Menace. Jennings's head snapped up. What in God's name is that? Eva's eyes flew open. She knew that sound. It was a sound from another era, a relic, a beast of a machine that had no business being in the sky. It was the sound of a Fairchild Republic A-10 Thunderbolt II. The Warthog, and it was getting closer. Over the ridge, a silhouette appeared, black against the dying sun. It was unmistakable. The straight, wide wings. The twin engines mounted high. On the fuselage, the iconic, snub-nosed cockpit. And at the front, the business end of the GAU-8 Avenger, a 7-barrel Gatling gun that fired 30mm depleted uranium shells at a rate of 3,900 rounds per minute. It was a dragon, a monster, a flying tank, and it was screaming down into the valley. Who is that? Identify that aircraft. Jennings barked into his own radio, his composure finally shattering. That is a restricted airspace. I gave no authorization. Eva didn't answer. She couldn't. She was frozen, staring at the main monitor where the impossible was happening. The A-10, a lone wolf, was diving headfirst into the enemy stronghold. A blossom of fire erupted from its nose, a sound like the sky being torn in half. BI. The ground where the enemy's heavy machine gun had been just moments before erupted in a series of violent, churning explosions. The red icons on her screen flickered, then dozens of them vanished in an instant. Do you see this? Sergeant Miller's voice was no longer panicked. It was filled with a breathless, disbelieving awe. It's an angel. A freaking angel. Eva's mind raced, trying to process the impossible. No one flew an A-10 into a hot zone like this without authorization. It was career suicide. More than that, it was literal suicide. The enemy's anti-air capabilities were top tier. A slow-moving plane like the Warthog should have been a clay pigeon. But it wasn't. It was weaving, dodging, its pilot flying with a kind of reckless, balletic grace that defied all logic and training. Who is in that cockpit? Jennings roared, his face turning a shade of purple. Eva had only seen in cartoons. A new voice, calm and steady, crackled to life, not on the command channel, but on the open, unsecured emergency frequency. It was a woman's voice. A voice that was achingly familiar. This is Ghost Rider. Just cleaning up some trash in the neighborhood. Phoenix Actual, you might want to tell your boys to keep their heads down. It's about to get a little loud. Eva felt the blood drain from her face. Ghost Rider. It couldn't be. It was a call sign from a ghost, a pilot who, officially, no longer existed. A pilot she had personally grounded. A pilot who was a sister. The A-10 bank hard, its wingtips seeming to scrape the canyon walls. A plume of smoke erupted from its left engine as a missile, fired from a hidden position, streaked past and detonated just behind it. The plane shuddered violently, a wounded beast. She's hit. She's hit. Someone yelled in the command center. On the screen, the A-10 wobbled, losing altitude, spiraling down towards the rocky floor of the Devil's Jawbone. Jennings let out a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a sneer. The fool. I knew it. Eva's heart stopped. Her sister. In that plane. Going down. The brief, impossible hope that had surged through her moments before now curdled into pure, cold terror. She had been given a miracle, only to have it snatched away in the most cruel and personal way imaginable. The roar of the Warthog was replaced by the sickening whine of a dying engine. The angel was falling from the sky, and the line was about to break. The image of the spiraling A-10 was burned into Eva's mind. A Polaroid of failure developed in the darkroom of her soul. The command center was a cacophony of panic shouts and the static-laced death rattle of the emergency channel. Colonel. Jennings was already turning away from the screen, a grim satisfaction settling on his features. He was composing the after-action report in his head, the one that would lay the blame squarely at her feet, now with an added charge of a rogue aircraft complicating the disaster. The loss of her men would be a tragedy. The loss of a $10 million aircraft, flown by a disgraced pilot, would be an inexcusable scandal. And she, Commander Eva Rostova, would be the scapegoat for it all. But the A-10 wasn't dead yet. Through the speakers, over the whine of the damaged engine, came that same impossibly calm voice. Her sister's voice. Just shaking off a little. Turbulence. Nothing to see here, folks. On the monitor, the Warthog, which had seemed destined to become a new crater in the Afghan landscape, suddenly roared back to life. The pilot had somehow wrestled the controls, fighting against physics and fear, and pulled the nose up just feet from the ground. The plane scraped the valley floor, sending a shower of sparks and rock fragments into the air, a sound like giant claws tearing at the earth. It was a maneuver that shouldn't have been possible, a testament to a level of skill and sheer nerve that bordered on insanity. The A-10, wounded but defiant, climbed again, its one good engine screaming in protest. It banked, not away from the fight, but back towards it. What is she doing? Jennings breathed, his disbelief overriding his anger. She's a sitting duck. He was right. The enemy, emboldened by the near miss, had recalibrated. Multiple heat-seeking missile trails now painted the sky, a web of death converging on. The lone, limping aircraft. It was a slaughter, Ghost Rider. You are ordered to disengage immediately. Your aircraft is compromised. Jennings yelled into his comms, a futile attempt to impose order on a situation that had spiraled into pure chaos. The reply was laced with a dark, almost cheerful irony. Negative, Colonel. I'm having too much fun. Besides, I made a promise. A promise. The word hit Eva like a physical blow. It threw her back 15 years, to a dusty airfield in Arizona. She was a freshly minted lieutenant, all sharp creases and nervous energy. Her sister, Anya, younger by 2 years but already a legend in flight school, was leaning against the wing of a trainer jet, chewing on a piece of straw, her eyes hidden behind a pair of aviator sunglasses. Anya was the natural, the prodigy, the one who could make a plane dance. Eva was the planner, the strategist, the one who saw the world as a chessboard. You're gonna be a commander one day, Evie, Anya had said, a confident smirk playing on her lips. You'll be in a dark room, staring at screens, moving us pieces around. And one day, you're gonna move a piece into a corner you can't get out of. It happens. But you remember this. She had poked Eva in the chest, her expression turning serious. You call me. I don't care where I am or what I'm doing. I will be your get-out-of-jail-free card. I will be the roar over the ridge. That's a promise. Eva had dismissed it then as youthful bravado. But Anya had never broken a promise. Not once now, in the valley of the Devil's Jawbone, Anya was keeping that promise. The A-10, a wounded beast, became a cornered one. It released a storm of flares, brilliant magnesium blossoms that bloomed in the twilight, a desperate attempt to confuse the incoming missiles. Some of the missiles veered off, chasing the ghosts of heat. But one, faster and more advanced than the others, stayed true. It was a new generation of weapon, one they hadn't been briefed on. It slammed into the Warthog's tail section with a concussive thump that was audible even over the comms. The plane shuddered, and this time, the damage was critical. The emergency channel went silent. The A-10, its tail assembly shredded, began to fall, not in a spiral, but like a stone. She's down. For real this time, an operator said, his voice a funereal whisper on the ground. Sergeant Miller's voice came through, strained and urgent. Whatever she did, it worked. The enemy is in disarray. They're pulling back from our position. We have a window. I repeat, we have a window. Anya had bought them time. She had traded her life for theirs, the weight of it crushed. Eva. The grief was a physical thing, a black hole opening in her chest, threatening to swallow her whole. But the commander in her, the part that Anya had always believed in, refused to let it. She had a window. She had a duty, all units, execute Plan Bravo. Eva's voice was raw, but it was steady. Miller, get your men to the extraction. Point. Now. Move. The green icons on the screen began to move, a slow, painful crawl towards the designated rendezvous. But the red icons, which had been in retreat, were now regrouping. They weren't running. They were converging on a new location. The crash site. They're going for the pilot, Jennings said, stating the obvious. They'll want her for interrogation. That aircraft is full of classified technology. He looked at Eva, his eyes narrowed. Your sister just handed the enemy the keys to the kingdom. The insult was a splash of gasoline on the fire of Eva's grief. It was Jennings and men like him who had pushed Anya out. A year ago, Anya had been the star of the A-10 program, a pilot so skilled they were rewriting the training manuals around her. But she was also a maverick. She bent rules she saw as stupid, she spoke truth to power, and she had a particularly sharp tongue for incompetent officers who put their careers ahead of their people. She had made enemies. Powerful enemies. The final straw was a training exercise where she had shown up a visiting general, flying a simulated sortie that was so audacious and so successful it made the general's own multi-billion-dollar F-35 program look obsolete and bloated. The general, a man with deep connections to the military-industrial complex, had been humiliated. 2 weeks later, a trumped-up charge of insubordination and reckless endangerment appeared on Anya's record. She was grounded, her career shattered. Eva, already a commander and trying to navigate the treacherous political waters, had advised her to lay low, to play the game. Don't make waves, she had told her. It was the worst advice she had ever given. Anya, unable to fly, had resigned her commission, disappearing into the civilian world, a ghost in her own life, until today. "Sir, we are picking up a signal," a tech specialist called out. "It's a locator beacon." From the pilot. Eva's head snapped towards the tech's monitor. A single, pulsing dot appeared on the topographical map, right in the center of the crash site. "Anya was alive, she's alive," Eva whispered, the words a prayer. Jennings was already shaking his head. "It's a trap. They'll be waiting. We can't send a team in there. It's a suicide mission. We can't just leave her." Eva shot back, her voice ringing with a fury that silenced the room. "Commander Rostova," Jennings said, his voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. "Your personal feelings are irrelevant. We have 12 men who are still in jeopardy. Our priority is to get them out. Your sister knew the risks. She made her choice. Now you have to make yours." He was right. It was the cold, hard logic of command. Save the many, sacrifice the few. Or in this case, the one. Her own sister. The promise Anya had made on that dusty airfield echoed in her mind. "I will be your get-out-of-jail-free card." She had kept her promise. Now Eva had to decide if she could live with the cost. She looked at the screen. Miller's team was halfway to the extraction point, but the enemy was closing the gap. They were caught between the proverbial rock and a hard place. Then she looked at the single, pulsing dot. Anya. Alone. Wounded. Surrounded. A new transmission came through, this time from Miller on the ground. We have a problem. The extraction point. It's compromised. The enemy. They're not just at the crash site. They are everywhere. It's like they knew where we were going." The ice in Eva's stomach returned, colder and sharper than before. Jennings's face went pale. It wasn't just a well-executed ambush. It was a betrayal. Someone had leaked their plans. The enemy knew their playbook, every move, every contingency. And in that moment, Eva understood. This wasn't just about her men being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It wasn't just about her sister's reckless heroism. This was something deeper, something more sinister. They hadn't been outmaneuvered. They had been sold out. Her eyes darted from the screen showing Miller's doomed retreat, to the pulsing dot of her sister's beacon, to the cold, calculating face of Colonel Jennings. He had been so quick to write them off, so eager to declare the mission a failure. He had called her sister's A-10 a waste of assets. But what if the real waste, the real betrayal, was standing right here in the room with her? The thought was a spark in the darkness, a terrifying, electrifying possibility. "Get me a secure channel to the 75th Ranger Regiment," Eva said, her voice suddenly calm, imbued with a new, chilling authority. She was no longer a commander on the verge of defeat. She was a woman with nothing left to lose, and a promise to keep. Jennings blinked. "The 75th? They are a Black Ops unit. They don't answer to base command. You don't have the authority." Eva turned to face him, her eyes locking onto his. The grief was still there, but now it was forged into something else. Something hard and sharp and dangerous. "I know their commander," she said, the words hanging in the air like a threat. "And he owes me a favor." She paused, letting the weight of her insubordination settle. "And as for my authority, Colonel, you're right. I'm not just going to risk my career. I'm going to burn it to the ground if I have to. I'm going in to get my sister, and I'm going to find the traitor who put her there." The command center was silent. Air thick with tension. Eva had just declared war, not just on the enemy in the valley, but on the very chain of command she had sworn to uphold. She had drawn a line in the sand, and the next sound she heard would determine if she was about to cross it alone. The silence in the command center stretched thin, a fragile membrane about to be pierced by the sharp point of insubordination. Colonel Jennings stared at Eva, his face a mask of disbelief that was slowly hardening into rage. In his world, the chain of command was sacrosanct, an 11th commandment handed down from the gods of war. For a subordinate, a female commander he already held in contempt, to so flagrantly defy him was not just a breach of protocol. It was heresy. You were relieved of command. Rostova, he snarled, his voice low and venomous. He reached for the master comms panel, intending to cut her off, to erase her from the equation. Security. I want this officer removed from the command center immediately. But the two MPs stationed by the door didn't move. They exchanged a nervous glance, their eyes darting from the furious colonel to the unnervingly calm commander. They had heard the same transmissions, seen the same screens. They had seen the lone A-10, the impossible flight, the sacrifice. They had heard Sergeant Miller's voice, the hope turning to despair. They were soldiers, and they recognized a true leader when they saw one. And right now, it wasn't the man with the medals. Before Jennings could react, Eva's voice cut through the tension, sharp and precise as a surgeon's scalpel. Sergeant, patch me through to Colonel Marcus Thorne. Authorization code, Sierra Victor 99 Tango. Now. The comm sergeant, a young woman named Chen, hesitated for only a fraction of a second. She had been in the room when Eva had briefed Miller's team, had seen the genuine care in her eyes. She had also seen the casual disdain in Jennings's. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Patching now. I will have you court-martialed for this, Chen. Jennings roared, taking a step towards her console. You'll have to stand in line, Colonel, Eva said without looking at him. Her focus was entirely on the screen, on the pulsing that was a sister. A new voice, gravelly and impatient, filled the room. This is Thorne. This had better be good, Rostova. I'm in the middle of something. Colonel Marcus Thorne was a legend in the special operations community, a man who operated in the shadows and answered only to the highest levels of command. He was also the man whose life Eva had saved 2 years ago during a botched operation in Yemen. She had been a tactical analyst then, and had spotted a flaw in the intelligence, a hidden ambush, and had rerouted his team with seconds to spare. He had told her then, if you ever need a ghost exorcised, you call me. Marcus. Eva's voice was tight, controlled. I'm calling in the marker. I have a downed pilot, my sister, in the Devil's Jawbone Valley. I have a pinned down recon team. And I have a traitor. There was a pause on the other end of the line. The only sound was the faint hum of a helicopter rotor. A traitor. That's a heavy accusation, Eva. Their comms, their routes, their extraction point, all compromised. The enemy knew everything. It's a setup. My sister flew in blind to save my men and got shot down for her trouble. She's alive, beacon is active, but the enemy is closing in. Bagram has written them all off. I need your team. The Jawbone is a hornet's nest right now, Thorne said, his voice grim. My birds aren't equipped for that kind of anti-air. It's a suicide run. Her plane was an A-10, Marcus, Eva said, playing her last card. An old one. She retrofitted it herself. The tech on that bird, it's not standard. It's personal. And if the enemy gets their hands on it, and on her, they'll have schematics for systems that officially don't exist. Systems your people use. Another. Pause, longer this time. Eva could almost hear the gears turning in Thorne's mind. A downed pilot was a tragedy. A downed pilot who was also a brilliant, rogue engineer with a head full of Black Project secrets was a national security crisis. Give me the coordinates, Thorne said finally. I'll see what I can do. But Eva, if this is a wild goose chase, the blowback will be biblical. Just get her out, Marcus, Eva whispered. That's all I ask. The line went dead. Eva turned to face Jennings, whose face was now a thunderous shade of crimson. You have sealed your fate, Commander, he hissed. No, Colonel, Eva replied, her voice as cold as the grave. I've just sealed yours. She pointed to the main tactical display. Look. On the screen, the red icons representing. The enemy forces were no longer just converging on the crash site. They were forming a deliberate, structured perimeter. It wasn't the chaotic swarm of insurgents looking for a prize. It was a professional containment operation. And something else was wrong. The icons themselves were different. They were using a new encryption signature, one that Chen Systems were struggling to decrypt. They're not local militia, Chen said, her eyes wide. The signal profile, it's military grade. Russian. Spetsnaz. The revelation hit the room like a physical shockwave. This wasn't a random Taliban ambush. This was a state-sponsored operation. The stakes had just been raised from a regional conflict to a potential international incident. This is impossible, Jennings stammered, the color draining from his face. What would the Russians be doing here? My sister, Eva said, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. This was never about my recon team. They were just the bait. The target was always Anya. They knew she would come. It was a trap of breathtaking sophistication. They had used Eva's team to lure Anya into the sky, knowing her history, her skills, and her fierce loyalty. They had shot her down not to kill her, but to capture her. To capture her mind. Eva's blood ran cold. Anya hadn't just been working on retrofitting an old A-10 in her forced retirement. She had been a consultant, off the books, for DARPA, the government's advanced research agency. She was working on next-generation drone swarm technology, autonomous flight systems, things that could change the face of modern warfare. Eva had only known fragments, whispers Anya had let slip during their rare, coded conversations. Anya called it her ghost in the machine project. The traitor hadn't just leaked the mission parameters. They had leaked the single greatest vulnerability in the entire US military apparatus in the region, Eva's love for her sister. Her eyes fell on Jennings. He looked terrified, but it wasn't the terror of a man caught in a geopolitical firestorm. It was the terror of a man who was out of his depth, a bureaucrat caught in a gunfight. It wasn't him. The betrayal was more sophisticated than that. It had to be someone with access to not just mission plans, but to deep-level psychological profiles. Someone who knew both sisters. Chen, Eva said, her mind racing. Pull up the mission manifest for the last 48 hours. Cross-reference it with all outgoing encrypted communications from this outpost. I want to know who sent what, and to where. That's highly classified, Chen stammered. I don't have the clearance. You do now, Eva said, her voice leaving no room for argument. She was operating in a grey zone where rules were meaningless and results were all that mattered. As Chen's fingers flew across the keyboard, a new alert flashed on the screen. It was from Miller's team. They had abandoned the compromised extraction point and had taken refuge in a series of ancient, crumbling ruins on a low ridge overlooking the crash site. This is Miller. His voice was a ragged whisper. We are dug in, but we are pinned. They're all around us. We can see the crash site from here. They're setting up equipment. It looks like they're trying to cut into the cockpit. Eva's heart hammered against her ribs. Time was running out. Thorne's team was still minutes away. The Russians were about to get to Anya. Hold your position, Sergeant, Eva commanded. Do not, I repeat, do not engage unless absolutely necessary. You are my eyes and ears. Tell me what you see. The next few minutes were an eternity. Miller's hushed voice guided Eva through the scene below. A team of highly trained soldiers, their movements economical and precise, were using plasma torches on the A-10's reinforced canopy. The air shimmered with the intense heat, even visible on the drone feed that Thorne had now patched into their system. 2 of Thorne's stealth helicopters, Little Birds, were streaking across the desert, flying nap of the earth to avoid detection, but they were still too far out. They're through the canopy, Miller reported, his voice tight with tension. They're pulling her out. Eva felt a wave of nausea. She was helpless, a spectator at her own sister's abduction. Wait, Miller said. Wait a minute. Something's happening. What is it, Sergeant? Talk to me. The plane. The plane is making a noise. A noise? What kind of noise? Eva asked, confused. A buzzing sound. High-pitched. Getting louder. On the drone feed, Eva could see it now. The Russian soldiers who had been reaching into the cockpit were recoiling, shouting at each other in confusion. One of them pointed frantically at the plane's fuselage, and then, from access panels all over the A-10's battered frame, they emerged. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Small, black, insect-like drones, no bigger than a man's hand. They rose. From the plane like a swarm of angry hornets, their buzzing filling the air, a high-tech chorus of death. Anya's ghost in the machine. It wasn't just a flight system. It was a defense system. The swarm descended on the Russian team with terrifying speed. The drone feed became a chaotic blur of motion, the sounds of screams and the high-frequency crackle of electrical discharges echoing over the comms. The Spetsnaz, some of the most feared soldiers in the world, were being overwhelmed by a cloud of miniature killing machines die in the command center. Everyone stared at the screen, mesmerized and horrified. Jennings looked like he had seen a ghost. "My God," he whispered. "What has she built?" The swarm was a living, thinking entity, a whirlwind of carbon fiber and circuitry. It cleared the area around the A-10 in seconds. Then, as if guided by a single mind, it turned its attention. It began moving towards the ridge where Miller's team was hiding. Miller's voice was a choked cry of terror. They're coming for us. The drones. They're coming for us." The swarm didn't differentiate between friend and foe. It was a purely defensive weapon, programmed to eliminate any potential threat in its vicinity. And Miller's team, armed and in a defensive position, was a threat. Eva's blood ran cold. Anya's last, desperate gambit to save herself was about to kill the very men she had tried to protect. The miracle had become a curse. The angel had unleashed her demons. And Eva, the commander, the sister, was forced to watch as her men and her only family were about to be annihilated by the same terrifying, brilliant creation. She had pulled one set of pieces from the fire, only to watch them be consumed by another. The buzzing of the drone swarm was a monstrous, rising tide of sound, even through the tinny speakers of the command center. On the drone feed, the black clouds swept up the ridge towards Miller's position, an inexorable wave of death. The men's panicked shouts were a chaotic counterpoint to the swarm's unified, terrifying hum. They were trapped, caught between the Russian forces regrouping below and the autonomous killing machines of their own side. It was the ultimate irony, a battlefield catch-22 written in blood and code. Tell them to hold their fire. Eva yelled, her mind racing, trying to find a move on a chessboard that had been flipped over. The drones are responding to aggression. Tell them to drop their weapons. Show they're not a threat. That's suicide. Miller shot back, his voice cracking. The Russians are right below us. If we disarm, they'll pick us off in seconds. He was right. It was an impossible choice. Be torn apart by the swarm, or be executed by the Spetsnaz. Eva's grand plan, her defiant stand against the chain of command, was collapsing into a massacre she had inadvertently orchestrated. The weight of it was suffocating. "There has to be a kill switch," Jennings muttered, staring at the screen in horror. "A fail-safe. No one would build something like that without a way to turn it off." A kill switch. Of course. Anya was a brilliant engineer, but she was also a pilot. She would have built in a back door, a way to regain control. But what was it? A frequency? A code? A voice command? The secret was locked in the mind of her sister, who was either unconscious or dead in the cockpit of the A-10. "Chen, get me the schematics for the A-10's communication system," Eva commanded, a desperate idea forming in her mind. "The standard ones. And any field modifications that have been logged for experimental tech." "I'm still locked out of the high-level files," Chen replied, her voice strained with effort. "Then hack them," Eva said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "I don't care what you have to do. Get me in. Now." While Chen worked, her fingers a blur on the keyboard, Eva's eyes were glued to the drone feed. Thorne's little birds were now visible, two dark specks against the bruised twilight sky. They were close, but not close enough. The swarm was just yards from Miller's position. This was it. The final moments, and then a new voice crackled. Over the open emergency channel. It was weak, distorted by static, but it was unmistakable. "Evie, can you hear me?" It was Anya. Eva lunged for the comms panel. "Anya, I'm here. I hear you. Are you all right?" "Peachy," Anya's voice rasped, laced with pain but still defiant. "Just redecorating. The new tenants are a bit aggressive." A fit of coughing racked her, and for a moment, the line was silent. The swarm. I can't control it. The primary command interface is fried. It's running on its own. On the Echo protocol. The Echo protocol. It was a name Eva had heard once before, in a hushed, late-night conversation. It was Anya's failsafe, a deep-level system she had designed. She had described it as a digital ghost, a learning algorithm that could operate the swarm independently, based on her own mission parameters and threat assessments. It was designed to protect her, to be her. But the battle damage had corrupted it. The ghost in the machine was now just a ghost. A vengeful, indiscriminate one. How do I stop it, Anya? Eva pleaded, her voice breaking. It's going to kill my men. You can't stop it, Anya breathed. But you might be able to redirect it. It's still linked to my biometrics. My voice. It's looking for a threat to neutralize. You have to give it a bigger threat. A bigger threat. Eva looked at the tactical map. The Russian forces were regrouping at the base of the ridge, taking up fortified positions, their attention now divided between Miller's team and the approaching American helicopters. They were the bigger threat. I need to talk to it. Eva said, understanding dawning. I need to broadcast your voice, Anya. I need a command. What's the command? The override phrase is, Valkyrie's Requiem, Anya whispered, her voice fading. But the system needs a target designation. A clear one. You have to paint the target for it. Use the plane's targeting laser. It's the only thing still working. The targeting laser. A beam of light, invisible to the naked eye, that guided smart munitions. If Eva could get control of the A-10 systems, she could paint the Russian positions, and Anya's voice command would unleash the swarm on them. Chen, did you get me in? Eva yelled, I'm in. Chen announced, a triumphant note in her voice. I have remote access to the A-10's auxiliary systems. Patch the targeting laser controls to my console, and link my microphone to the plane's external broadcast system. Boost the signal. I want everyone in that valley to hear it. Patching now, Chen confirmed. On her screen, a new interface appeared, a targeting reticle overlaid on the drone's video feed. Eva's hand closed around her mouse, her movements now steady and sure. The commander was back. She placed the reticle squarely on the largest concentration of Russian soldiers. Anya, I need you to say it one more time, Eva said into her microphone, her voice calm and clear. Loud and clear. There was a moment of silence, and Eva's heart clenched with fear. Had she lost her? Then, Anya's voice came through, no longer a weak whisper, but a defiant roar that seemed to draw on some hidden reserve of strength. It was the voice of the prodigy pilot, the maverick, the woman who would not be broken, Valkyrie's Requiem. Eva hit the broadcast switch. Anya's voice, amplified by the A-10's powerful speakers, echoed through the valley, a ghostly, electronic command that seemed to hang in the air. For a second, nothing happened. The swarm continued its inexorable advance on Miller's position. It's not working. Miller yelled, wait, Eva breathed. The swarm, which had been a chaotic cloud, suddenly coalesced. It stopped its advance, hovering in the air for a breathtaking moment, a shimmering, black sphere of suspended death. It was as if it was listening, processing. Then, as one, the entire swarm turned. It abandoned Miller's ridge and screamed. Down into the valley, straight towards the laser-painted Russian position. The effect was devastating. The drone feed showed the Russian soldiers turning in confusion, raising their weapons just as the black cloud engulfed them. It was a silent, terrifying massacre. There were no explosions, only the high-pitched hum of the drones and the brief, choked-off screams of their victims. In less than 30 seconds, it was over. The red icons on the tactical map vanished. The valley fell silent. In the command center, no one moved. They had just witnessed a new kind of warfare, something both beautiful and utterly terrifying. The silence was broken by the sound of Thorne's voice. Jesus! Eva! What did you just do? His helicopters were now descending towards the crash. Sight, their path clear. I kept a promise, Eva said, slumping back in her chair, the adrenaline finally leaving her. She had done it. She had saved her men. She had saved her sister, but as Thorne's team rappelled down to the smoking wreckage of the A-10, a new message flashed on Chen's screen. It was the result of the communications trace Eva had ordered. Chen said, her voice barely a whisper. I found the source of the leak. The unauthorized transmission that gave away the mission details. Who was it? Eva asked, her body tense once more. Chen turned to look at her, her face pale. The signal didn't originate from this outpost. It came from Bagran, from the office of the Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence. Eva's blood ran cold. The Deputy Chief of Staff. That was General Peters. The same General Anya. Had humiliated in the training exercise. The man who had orchestrated her downfall. This wasn't just about stealing technology. This was personal. It was revenge, played on a geopolitical scale, but that wasn't the most chilling part. Chen scrolled down, her eyes widening in horror. There's more, she said, her voice trembling. There was a second encrypted file in the data packet. It wasn't a mission plan. It was a program. A piece of code. What kind of code? Eva asked, a sense of dread washing over her. It's a virus. A worm. Designed to target a specific, experimental drone control system. It's a kill code. But not for the swarm. Chen looked up, her eyes filled with a terror Eva had never seen before. The file is named Requiem. It was designed to be triggered by that exact phrase. When you broadcasted your sister's voice, you didn't just activate the swarm. A new alert began to flash on the main screen, a frantic, repeating warning from Thorne's team on the ground. Chen whispered, the words falling like stones in the silent room. You activated the plane's self-destruct sequence. On the drone feed, the image was stark. Thorne's men were feet from the cockpit, reaching for Anya. And the A-10, the magnificent, wounded beast that had saved them all, began to glow with a fierce, white-hot intensity from within. The angel was not just falling, it was about to become a star and take everyone, including her sister, with it. The image on the screen was a silent, terrible countdown. The light emanating from the A-10's fuselage grew brighter, a malevolent pulse that illuminated the horrified faces of Thorne's Rangers. They were frozen, caught in the blast radius of a trap they hadn't seen coming. General Peters's betrayal was a masterpiece of cruelty. He hadn't just wanted to capture Anya and her technology, he had wanted to erase them completely, along with anyone who tried to intervene. It was a scorched earth policy of personal vengeance. How long? Eva's voice cut through the stunned silence of the command center. The energy signature is spiking exponentially, Chen answered, her voice trembling as she analyzed the data stream. 30 seconds. Maybe less. 30 seconds. An eternity. And no time at all. Thorne's voice, usually the epitome of calm, was a frantic bark over the comms. Get back. Everyone, get back. Abort. Abort. His men were scrambling, but it was too late. They were too close. The self-destruct was designed to be catastrophic, to vaporize the plane and its secrets, leaving nothing behind but a crater. And her sister was at the heart of it. Eva's mind, which had been a whirlwind of grief and fury, suddenly became a place of absolute, crystalline calm. The commander took over. Not the commander who followed the rules, but the one Anya had always known she was, the one who saw the whole board, even in the dark. Anya, she said into the comms, her voice low and steady, a lifeline in the storm. Can you hear me? You need to eject. Now. A weak, pain-filled laugh came back. The ejection seat is part of the fireworks package, Evie. Peters thought of everything. I'm hardwired in. Of course. No loose ends. No survivors. No witnesses. Eva's eyes darted across her console. Her brain processing 1,000 variables a second. The swarm, its primary targets eliminated, was hovering over the valley, a cloud of latent potential. The plane's systems were mostly fried, but Chen still had a sliver of access. The self-destruct was a program, a piece of code. And code could be fought. Chen, Eva said, her voice imbued with an authority that left no room for doubt. The virus that triggered the self-destruct, it's a worm, right? It's designed to replicate and overwrite the system's core functions. Yes, Chen stammered, trying to keep up. Then we fight fire with fire, Eva declared. Anya's Echo protocol, the ghost in the machine, it's a learning algorithm, more advanced than a simple worm. It's still active. We need to turn it inward. We need to command the ghost to fight the virus. That's theoretically possible, But I don't know the command, Chen said, her hope fading. It would be a deep-level function. Something only the Creator would know. I know it, a voice whispered over the comms. It was Anya. She was still there, still fighting. The command is Phoenix down. She coughed, a racking, painful sound. But it needs a catalyst, a massive power surge to reboot the core and initiate the counter-program. The plane's running on fumes. There isn't enough power. A power surge. Eva looked at the tactical map. Thorne's helicopters were hovering nearby, their engines screaming. They were power plants, floating generators of immense electrical energy, Marcus. Eva yelled. Into the comms. I need a power surge. Direct. Into the A-10. Can you do it? Are you insane, Eva? Thorne shot back. We'll be in the blast radius. And how do you propose we plug a helicopter into a plane? The winch. Eva said, the plan solidifying in her mind. Your rescue winch. The cable is high-tensile steel. It can conduct a current. You just have to ground it on the plane's fuselage. And your little birds have an emergency power discharge system for jump-starting other aircraft. It's a long shot, but it's the only shot we have. There was a heartbeat of silence. It was a crazy, desperate, suicidal plan. Do it. Thorne commanded his pilots, the decision made. Get us in there. Now. On the screen, one of the little birds, a marvel of agility, swooped down towards the glowing A-10. It was like watching a hummingbird try to mate with a supernova. The ranger on the winch, a man with nerves of steel, guided the heavy magnetic. Clamp down, 15 seconds. Chen yelled. The clamp slammed onto the A-10's wing with a shower of sparks. We are connected. Thorne's pilot yelled. Discharging now. The helicopter's lights dimmed as it shunted its entire electrical reserve down the cable. The A-10, which had been glowing with a steady, white-hot light, now pulsed violently. The light flickered, turned a sickly yellow, then blue. The energy signature on Chen's screen went haywire. Anya, now. Eva screamed from the speakers. Anya's voice, weak but clear, spoke the final command. Phoenix down. For a moment. That stretched into an eternity. Nothing happened. The glow intensified. The final, critical moment of the detonation sequence. This was it. They had failed, and then, the light died. It vanished as if a switch had been thrown, plunging the valley back into the gloom of twilight. The energy signature on Chen's screen flatlined. Silence.in the command center. A collective, ragged breath was released. They stared at the screens, not daring to believe. Thorne's voice, shaky for the first time Eva had ever heard, came over the comms. Status. One of his rangers, who had already reached the cockpit, leaned in. She's alive. The pilot is alive. We are getting her out. A wave of relief so powerful it almost brought Eva to her knees washed over her. But the fight wasn't over. Her eyes, cold and hard, turned to Colonel Jennings, who was slumped against a console, his face the color of ash. He was a broken man, a relic of a system she had just shattered. Colonel, Eva said, her voice dangerously quiet. You are a witness to treason at the highest level. You will be escorted to a secure room, where you will write down everything you saw and heard. Your testimony will be crucial. She then turned to Chen. Get me a secure line to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Tell him I have General Peters for him. Gift-wrapped. The resolution was swift and brutal. Faced with the irrefutable evidence from the outpost's logs, the testimony of Jennings and Thorne, and the living, breathing testimony of Anya Rostova, General Peters was arrested. His network of corruption, built on defense contracts and personal vendettas, crumbled. The story was buried, of course, classified under a mountain of national security acronyms. But the people who mattered knew. 2 weeks later, Eva stood on the tarmac at Bagram, the Afghan sun warm on her face. A transport plane was waiting. Beside her, in a wheelchair but with the same defiant spark in her eyes, was Anya. Her body was broken, but her spirit was not. She held a tablet in her lap, on which the code for the Echo protocol was displayed. So, what's next for the ghost in the machine? Eva asked, a small smile playing on her lips. Anya looked up at her own smile matching her sister's. I'm thinking of a name change. Phoenix has a nice ring to it, don't you think? She looked at Eva, her expression turning. Serious. They offered me my commission back. A promotion. A lab of my own. They want me to build more. And what did you tell them? Eva asked. Already knowing the answer, I told them my work isn't for sale. It belongs to the pilot who will always have my back. She looked out at the airfield. And what about you, Commander? I hear you're up for a promotion yourself. Seems you made some waves after all. Eva followed her gaze. Across the tarmac, Colonel Thorne was walking towards them. He stopped in front of Eva and rendered a slow, deliberate salute. It wasn't the perfunctory gesture of a subordinate. It was a sign of profound respect. The Rangers send their regards, Commander. He said, his voice gruff. And their thanks. If you ever need a ghost exorcised again, you know who to call. As Thorne walked away, Eva felt a sense of peace settle over her, a feeling she hadn't known in years. She had been tested, broken, and remade in the crucible of the devil's jawbone. She had faced down the enemy without, and the enemy within. She had earned her place, not through politics or protocol, but through fire and loyalty. But as the transport plane's ramp began to close, a young airman ran up to her, holding a secured data pad. An urgent message just came in for you. From the Pentagon. Eva took the data pad, a flicker of unease touching her. She entered her credentials, and a single file opened. It wasn't a message. It was a video. The image was grainy, sourced from a satellite or a high-altitude drone. It showed a remote, snow-covered facility deep in the mountains of Russia. And walking out of the facility was a man she recognized instantly. General Peters. He wasn't in handcuffs. He was shaking hands with a Russian officer. The video was timestamped just 1 hour ago. He hadn't been arrested. He had been traded. A quiet exchange, a political solution to a messy problem. The traitor who had tried to kill her sister, who had sold out her country, was free. And he knew exactly who had brought him down. Eva looked up from the screen, her eyes meeting her. Sisters. The peace she had felt moments before evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. This wasn't over. The battle for the valley was won, but the war had just begun. The commander had been given a second chance, and she knew, with absolute certainty, what she had to do next. The ghost had been saved. Now, it was time to go hunting.